Welcome to The Power of the P, the podcast designed to help you become empowered in your truth, free of fear. I'm E.L. Brooks, your host, here to bring you expert advice and effective tools based on neuroscience to help you deal with all the stressors in life, relationships, and work. I'm here to keep you off that struggle bus through the power of the P. Are you ready? Then let's go. Welcome to The Power of the P, episode number 8. And thank you for tuning in. This is technically a full podcast season, right? I do believe, right? 8 seasons or 8 episodes. So the team and I would like to thank everyone for the positive messages. Please note that we don't respond to any of our messages. That's just a rule of ours, so don't be offended. And we do that because people tend to respond to the positive messages and ignore the negative messages. And our position is that we're providing a perspective on different topics to be discussed, and we welcome any challenges to the facts, but we made it a rule not to respond in general as a form of practicing neutrality. So we have that rule because statistically, only 20% of the population lives above the line of accountability, and only 20% of the population takes responsibility for their actions and recognizes that they're the only ones that can control their outcomes, which means that 80% of the population lives below the line of accountability in the land of blame and shame, which justifies their actions. So knowing this, we predicted that we'd probably receive more negative feedback from time to time than positive feedback. But I'm actually happy to say that so far we've received tons and tons of positive feedback. Really only one negative, and I wouldn't even say that that was negative. It was really more snarky. So again, the team and I would like to thank you for all of the support so far. So if you're not familiar with the show's format, and this is your first time, it's like a Dear John life advice show, except for I'm EL. So it's Dear EL, where followers and subscribers send in the questions of things that they are dealing and struggling with, and I'll pick one. There's always one. Used to say one or two, but it's always one question, and I'll give insight and provide some effective tools that are backed in neuroscience. And I'll offer one key takeaway at the end to log into your memory to help you become more resilient and emotionally stable. So today we're following up on last week's post. She stomped the team and I around her simple yet profound question, asking me, what is the one thing that I would credit to developing a healthy mindset, right? And we were so stomped initially that we pulled another email from Darnell S., who was asking what determines a good or great life. And the team was like, let's go with this one. So as promised, this episode is around what determines a good or even great life. So let's jump into Darnell's email. Darnell writes, I've been pondering a question lately that I believe aligns well with the themes that you explore in your show. What, in your opinion, determines a great life, right? It says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this matter and how you've seen it play out in your conversations and your personal experiences. Thank you for considering my question, and I look forward to hearing from you. Best regards, Darnell S. So again, another simple yet powerful question, right? So let's get into it. And I actually want to start by prompting you with a few questions, right? So first, what keeps us healthy and happy? Do you know? And if you were to invest in your future self, if you had the technology to design your life and match it to your human design, by the way, that realization is already here. You can actually design your life according to your unique human design. But for now, let's think hypothetically, right? So think about what you would want your future self to look like, be like, and what is the quality of life that you want to experience. Where would you invest the time and energy around that design, right? I don't think that we really think about this really enough. But those that do obviously manifest all that they desire and focus on. But does that mean that they are living a good or even great life? I ask that because chances are you don't even know what determines a good to great life, right? I certainly didn't until I started researching a few years ago, because I did experience the international dream life, right? But I wasn't happy. I had it all, but I was empty because I was focused on the wrong life goals. But the beauty of life is that we become aware, and then we can direct and correct, right? We can direct our attention and correct our behaviors and actions to align with the things that better serve us. There was a recent survey of millennials asking them what their most important life goals were. And over 80% of the millennials said that the major life goal was to get rich. And then another 50% of those same millennials said another major life goal was to be famous. So I had to ask myself, is this bad programming or is this propaganda? Because we're all told to lean into work, right? Climb the corporate ladder and achieve more, 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 right? We're being programmed, some would say manipulated to believe that fame and fortune is the end all to be all. And if that is not possible, then leaning into work and climbing the corporate ladder are the steps needed to ensure a good life. My generational programming was study hard, good grades, get accepted to a great college and get a 4-year degree, and get a good job, right? Then get married, buy or start a house, raise a family, and live happily ever after. That was the American dream that was projected to me, and I conquered it and I fared very well, right? But I feel we're still buying into this old model of the American dream that is not representative of modern times. We buy into this so called old American dream, right? But behind the curtains, they don't mention, yeah, well, that college degree will require you to go into debt. And although you'll graduate with a 4-year degree, you'll have a mortgage sized debt that will have to be paid off immediately. Or, oh, yeah, that debt will stay with you for life or until you pay it off, right? And oh, yeah, your entry job will statistically be a job that doesn't even require a college degree. So now you're behind the 8 ball, making it less likely to find that perfect soulmate, right? And even if you do find that perfect mate, there's a more than 50% chance that that marriage will end up in divorce within the first 8 years. And oh, yeah, when you realize all of this, it will be too late because you'll already be on the hook. But I digressed. Or did I? Gen Z believe that they won't even be able to retire. And remember, our beliefs ultimately drive our behaviors. So if you don't believe that you're going to retire, that will throw off what I call your balance. For Dorsey says that the average Gen Z increased their credit card debt by 62% between the years 2022 and 2024. They're going for the immediate experience, and living decisions will affect your future self. And what I found through my own experience and just observing those who have great lives and those that don't is too many of these early decisions for instant gratification tend to put people on the back foot and behind the 8 ball. Then you find yourself in a place in life that you're not satisfied with, right? And remember, last episode, we discussed that over 100 million Americans, that's 1/3 of America, if you're not in the right place in life, you just have to look back 90 to 120 days and see what decisions you made or didn't make, right? And then you have to ask yourself, what decisions are you now going to make to design the life that you want to have to ensure that it's a good life or even a great life? I personally believe that we all need to wake up because we're being fed some bad programming, it's propaganda, which is why 91% of Americans of all ages are experiencing some sort of crisis. 91%. Say that again, 91%, right? The older generation is experiencing a health and retirement crisis. Younger generations is experiencing an education and mental health crisis, right? There's student loan debt, which people are figuring out is a bad return on investment, right? They feel hopeless and lied to. And let's face it, back in my generation, like 30 years ago, I'm aging myself, right? A 4-year degree was necessary, right? If you wanted to make 6 or 7 figures, it was a good return on your investment. And the investment wasn't so astronomical back then, right? But now there's no job security. You're not going to be staying at the same job for 30 plus years, right? There's just no loyalty. And technology is also phasing jobs out at a rapid pace. We're in a completely different era now, right? And that era is transactional all the way around, which is why all the generations are experiencing a spending crisis, right? We're spending the money that we don't have. Very why 91% of Americans are experiencing these crises is that we're starting to wake up to the fact that what we believe to be the American dream is no longer achievable. And even if it is achievable, it comes at a cost, right? Mostly our mental and physical health. And I don't want this to be a sad podcast. This is being real, right? So today, some may say that it's impossible to achieve the American dream. Some think that it's out of reach, which is why so many people are living for the weekend and becoming dream flat, or they're optimizing so hard around their lives too. So back to Darnell's original question, how do you live and experience a good and even great life? And to me, I believe
that you have to erase what we've been programmed to believe, which is outdated, in my honest opinion. And I believe that we need a new paradigm shift. Again, most people optimize for wealth and time because the wealthy know that money follows time, right? It's the reason why we believe that the more money we make, the more time and more freedom that we'll have, right? This is why we're programmed to focus on those two capitals, right? Financial and temporal. But there are more important capitals that add to the quality of your life. There's actual, and your fifth is your social, which is probably one of the most important ones. Now, we look at these five capitals in a completely different paradigm shift, right? So, human capital, we look at as it's our self love, our skills and beliefs, and our traits. Psychological capital is our emotional regulation, is our physical and our mental health. Temporal capital is really clarity of energy. Where our attention goes, energy flows, is being intentional with our time. Social capital is our networks and opportunities, our approximation with people to collaborate and contribute. And financial capital, we look at it completely different. We call it our GDP, our guaranteed direct payoff as a result of the four previous capitals, which is what you reap, you sow. So, having an understanding of our five capitals allows us and you to not only take agency of your lives, but really design your life with an understanding of all the important elements that adds to the longevity and quality of life. So, time and financial capital is considered quantitative, right? We can measure time and we can count our money, right? But the other three capitals are considered qualitative, right? They're part of our seven essential human needs. And these three capitals ensure that we're healthy and happy. And as you'll soon learn, those are the missing elements to this so called American dream model, right? So, what we need to do is we need to look at the real model of success and start to program ourselves around healthy and great. And I say proven because one of the most innovative studies around adult and human development was and still is being conducted by Harvard. We're monitoring the three major buckets, right? Health, career, and this big bucket of what they call home life and relationships. And today there are 60 survivors, most of them in their 90s, still participating in the study. And now of these men. The study started in 1938 initially, right, with a group of sophomore boys in Harvard University. And they all finished college during World War II, and most of them actually went off to serve in the war. And then the second group they followed was a group of boys from Boston's poorest neighborhoods. And they were chosen for the study because they were from the most troubled and disadvantaged families. Most of these second groups lived in what is referred to as tenements, right? Those are apartments and flats, and many without hot and cold running water, right? So polar opposites, right? You had the Harvard sophomore students and you had troubled and disadvantaged teens. So they tracked these two groups of boys into adulthood and watched the various careers and characteristics developed as they became adults, from bricklayers to doctors to lawyers to teachers. And one even became the president of the United States. The study showed everything, right? Some developed alcoholism, schizophrenia. The study showed that some climbing from the very bottom to the very top, and others trending in the other direction, where they went from privileged to poor. Harvard reaches out to everyone every 2 years to have all of the remaining participants answer some questions regarding their current lives. The study is pretty thorough, right? It involves videotaping interviews, medical records, conversations with family members and spouses about their deepest concerns, right? No topic is off limits. And about 10 years ago, the wives and a few significant others were asked to join the study to provide even more insight. So, what are the lessons that have come about from all of this data that has been collected for over 75 years, right? That's 7+ decades, more data than probably most of the viewing audience's age, right? Plus 20 or 30 years. Now, side note here, right? So we learn as humans from two vantage points, from experience or wisdom, right? From our own experience through trials and tribulations or through other people's wisdom, which is why this study is so insightful no matter what age you currently are. So the number one and clearest message and current takeaway from this 75-year study, it's not about wealth. It's not about fame. It's not about working harder or smarter. The clearest message is this: good, even great relationships keep us healthier and happier, period. So there are three huge lessons about relationships, and we're going to get into those. One, our social connection is great for us. and loneliness kills. Remember, your ego and your animal states create separation and isolation, which can lead you to believe that you're better off alone. You're not. People who are more socially connected to friends, family, community are happier. They're physically healthier and they live longer lives, period. And the experience of loneliness turns out to be very toxic. People who are isolated more than they want to be are less happy. Their health and their brain functions decline earlier in midlife, and they live shorter lives. And the sad fact is that 1 in 5 people in America will report at some given time that they are lonely. And I worked with and hung out with a lot of celebrities. I'm not mentioning any names for privacy's sake, but these were, and in some cases still are, large, big household names. And some of the most popular, wealthy, and famous people that, in my opinion, were living very lonely lives. And that is obviously with no judgment because I myself lived in a lonely marriage. And I remember Robin Williams' famous quote, "Still alone." So this is so important because it means that it's not the number of friends that you have, right? It's not that you're in a committed relationship. It's really about the quality of that relationship, the quality of your relationship with all your friends, family, community. They all need to be good or even great. Lesson number 2 is living in the midst of conflict and drama is bad for our health, really bad for our health. So high conflict marriages with little to no affection turns out to be very toxic and very bad for our health. It's even worse than divorce. The opposite is true. Living in warm, loving relationships is protective and safe. And the biggest predictor of healthy living is the quality of your relationships. Waldinger gathered information for people in their 50s to determine who would end up growing to be happy and healthy octogenarians. And those are people in their 80s, right? And it was always the ones who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50. They were the happiest and healthiest in their 80s. So good quality relationships seems to protect and buffer us from the elements of getting old. The report showed that the happiest people were the healthiest people. And on the days that they experienced physical pain, those that were in loving quality relationships experienced little to no shift in their mood or their emotions compared to those that were in relationships of conflict, right? So the ones that were in high conflict relationships, on the days that they had physical pain, their emotional mood and their pain was magnified. And the third huge lesson about relationships is good relationships just don't protect our bodies, they protect our brains. So being count on another person in times of needs, those people's memories stayed sharper longer, right? Compared to those who were in relationships and they felt that they couldn't count on the other persons, those people's experienced earlier memory decline. So just to clarify, the healthy, good relationships were not without any downturns, right? Those relationships weren't always 100% smooth sailing, right? Those couples could bicker from time to time, or in some cases, day in and day out. But the X factor is that they always knew that they could count on each other, right? There was a security and they both felt protected when all was said and done. So those arguments and bickering didn't take a toll on their memories. So the message is clear, right? Good quality relationships are good for our health and our well being, right? And you probably heard the old adage good quality relationships are good for the soul, right? This knowledge has been around for centuries, right? It's wisdom that is as old as the universe. So why is it so hard for people to get this and understand the importance of this? Why is it so easy to ignore? Well, one of the things is we're easily distracted and we've now been conditioned around immediacy. And as a result, we now expect instant gratification. We all want quick fixes, right? And let's face it, relationships require work. Relationships can be messy and complicated, and a bad relationship can be painful and scarring, making you not want to take that risk for fear of experiencing more pain. But all good and definitely great things take work, right? You have to cultivate and nurture relationships to make them good and even great. But we now know that that effort and work is definitely rewarded in the form of your health, happiness, and longevity. So you may be thinking now that you want to be rich and famous, right? And you may even have the need or feel the need to be rich and or rich and famous. But throughout history, and definitely throughout this 75-year-old Harvard study, even the young adults that participated and said initially that they wanted to be rich and famous. The ones that fared the best were the ones who eventually learned to lean into having quality relationships with family friends. Key takeaway is this. Quick note, I pulled some of this information from Peak Human Lab, so I want to give them a shout out as I try my best to reference those that influence the information that I share. I'm not always perfect, but the intention is there, right? Please know this. There's a lot of statistics that proves that the majority of people are experiencing uncertainty. Now listen up closely. In uncertain times, the more certain person will always push forward. And I'll say that again. In uncertain times, the more certain person will push forward. And what you want to be is an example, no longer a statistic. And the only way that you can do that is through the correction of your own experience and or implementing the wisdom of others who have been there and done that, right? And so if you want to experience a good life, you need to understand those three huge lessons around relationships, and you also need to listen to this takeaway. So the happiest people on the planet have four things in common. And again, I only share what I've either experienced myself and can confirm that it worked, or the things that I've implemented within others that have had proven results and impactful positive change. So again, the happiest people on the planet have four things in common. So let's discover what they are. So number one, of course, so they all have friends, right? Friends like chosen family members, or just a childhood friend, or a college friend, or a work colleague. No matter what it is, it's all good quality friends. And Robert Louis Stevenson said that a friend is a gift that you give to yourself. And Khalil Gibran, I think I pronounced that right, Khalil Gibran says that friendship is a sweet responsibility, never an opportunity. Number two is a big one, so please pay attention. Open up your ears because this is an important one. People that are healthy and happy have an ability to forgive. That's right. I said an ability to forgive. And trust me when I say that when you are intentional about forgiving those who you think harmed you or did you dirty, you'll be free. You'll naturally raise your vibration and you'll be at a higher frequency. So, anyone that is listening, if you're holding any bitterness or hate in your heart towards anyone, like an ex, a friend, a colleague, and the biggest one that I find is the siblings, right? I don't really understand this, and maybe because I'm an only child, but I've seen it too often, right? Usually around fights around estate settlements where the siblings are divided on how to allocate the assets, and it's kind of like a form of greed, and someone draws a line in the sand, and it's there. It literally destroys multiple generations because it doesn't just destroy you as siblings, it literally trickles down, as I've seen, to the offsprings, and it's pretty sad. So do yourself a favor and give yourself the gift of forgiveness. Get rid of it. There's a famous saying I think is so powerful and profound by a German theologian and author named Louis B. Smitty's, Smitty's, I think it is. I always pronounce names wrong, so forgive me if I pronounced it wrong. I think it's Louis B. Smitty's. And he said this, so listen up because it was like one of my famous and favorite. Free and to discover that that prisoner was you. Number three is doing things for others, thinking outside of yourself, right? And those that are truly happy are those who have discovered the power behind serving others, right? Giving back. And again, this is also linked to our social capital, our networks and opportunities, and our approximation with people to collaborate and to contribute. And number four is my favorite. It's the power of gratitude. It's one of the highest forms of vibration. It's a spiritual practice that involves acknowledging the divine good in one's life, such as the people, the memories, and the moments that bring you joy and meaning. Can also be defined as recognizing that people depend on others and you need to appreciate them for what they do. In other words, gratitude is the act of saying thank you. And saying thank you is a form of appreciation, and appreciation adds value to your life. And value adds energy. So, gratitude and appreciation is the energy that creates more energy. It creates positive momentum, and that adds to the quality of your life. And trust me, when you implement gratitude in your life will immediately change. And I do it twice a day. I do it first thing in the morning and first thing at night. And trust me, gratitude will upgrade your vibration, your mindset, and your lifestyle to be good or even great. And that is how you live a great life. Now you know. One love.
Today's episode was sponsored by Help to Love, a platform to open your mind, achieve mental agility, and integrate into the person that you're meant to be. With a wealth of resources and expert advice at your fingertips, Help to Love makes prioritizing your mental well-being easier than ever. It's a non-judgmental approach to mental wellness to help you design that 10x life you deserve. Sign up today at www.helptolove.com. Join the thousands of users who have already discovered the transformative power. Register for the free webinar that will open your mind and plant seeds for your ultimate breakthrough. If you felt this episode was helpful and insightful, please like, share, and subscribe so that you'll be notified of all of our upcoming content and special announcements. I'm E.O. Brooks, your host. As always, I thank you for your support and especially your time. One love.